The newlyweds stood on the sunlit beach, their hands entwined as waves gently lapped at the shore. Ethan Walker couldn't stop grinning as he gazed at his wife, Miranda, radiant in her flowing white dress. The day before had been their wedding, a small, intimate affair attended by family and close friends. The Walkers were well known in their quiet Texas town, Ethan, a self-made entrepreneur who ran a growing construction business, and Miranda, a charismatic paralegal with big dreams of becoming a lawyer. The Walker family had always prided themselves on their tight-knit bond. Ethan's younger sister, Natalie, was a free spirit, always a phone call away for advice or a quick laugh. His parents, Karen and Dan, had been married for nearly 40 years and were the epitome of a loving, enduring partnership. Everyone adored Miranda, and why wouldn't they? She was charming, witty, and seemed genuinely in love with Ethan. The honeymoon had been a dream, a secluded beachfront retreat where the world faded away. But even as they laughed and exchanged promises of forever, a sliver of doubt occasionally flickered in Ethan's mind. It wasn't about Miranda directly, she was everything he'd ever wanted, but in the whirlwind of love, there had been small moments when her eyes didn't quite match her smile, moments he brushed off as wedding jitters. Returning home from the honeymoon, Ethan threw himself back into work while Miranda returned to her law firm. They spent their evenings together unpacking gifts, hanging pictures, and talking about the future. Their lives seemed perfect. Until one fateful day, a mere 24 hours after their wedding, when a seed of betrayal was sown. It began with a seemingly innocuous slip of paper, a receipt Ethan discovered tucked inside the pocket of Miranda's purse. At first, it didn't register. He was looking for car keys she'd borrowed when the neatly folded paper fell to the ground. Picking it up, Ethan noticed the name of a downtown restaurant they had never visited together. The date caught his attention, the day after their wedding. "Miranda," he called, his voice steady but curious. She appeared in the doorway, a cup of tea in hand. "What's up?" Ethan waved the receipt. "Were you at Café Monarch the other day?" Miranda's smile faltered for a split second before she covered it with a casual laugh. "Oh, that must have been a work thing. You know how last-minute lunches go." But Ethan knew Miranda's law firm never held meetings there, it was too upscale for their budget-conscious team. He wanted to press her, to ask why her boss, Leonard Gates, was the only name mentioned on the receipt, but he stopped himself. Doubts crept in, but he hated the idea of mistrusting his wife so soon after pledging his life to her. That night, Miranda left for a team-building dinner at work. Ethan's gut twisted. When Natalie dropped by to return a toolbox she'd borrowed, she immediately noticed his distracted demeanor. "Hey, big bro, what's up? You look like you've seen a ghost," Natalie teased, leaning against the counter. "It's probably nothing," Ethan muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Miranda's been acting a little off." Natalie's brow furrowed. "Off how?" Ethan explained the receipt, Miranda's odd demeanor, and the increasing frequency of her late nights at work. Natalie listened, her expression growing serious. "You know I love Miranda, but trust your instincts, Ethan," she said. "If something doesn't feel right, it's worth looking into." Ethan nodded, though guilt gnawed at him. He didn't want to be the husband who spied on his wife, but Natalie's words resonated. That evening, while Miranda was still out, Ethan opened her laptop. As he scrolled through her email, a message caught his eye. It was from Leonard Gates, her boss, marked with a red exclamation point. "Let's talk tomorrow. Last night was incredible. I'll make sure you get the raise. Same time, same place." Ethan's stomach dropped as he stared at the screen. His hands clenched into fists, his pulse roaring in his ears. The Walkers' perfect family image was about to fracture under the weight of deception. But Ethan didn't storm out of the house or confront Miranda right away. Instead, he reached out to someone he trusted implicitly, his mother, Karen. Sitting across from her at the dining table, he revealed everything. "Mom, what would you do if Dad ever—" "I don't know, broke your trust?" Ethan's voice cracked. Karen reached for his hand, her expression pained. "Your father and I have been through more than you know, Ethan. But trust is like a vase, once it's shattered, even if you glue it back together, the cracks will always show." She paused. "What did Miranda do?" Ethan hesitated, then shared the email. Karen's face hardened, but she didn't jump to conclusions. Whatever you choose to do, Ethan, remember this: anger can burn bridges, but wisdom builds paths. If you confront her, be sure it's the right time. Ethan decided he needed undeniable proof before he could confront Miranda. The next day, he installed tracking software on her phone. As he monitored her messages and locations, the puzzle pieces began to align: a chain of rendezvous, secret calls, and repeated mentions of Leonard. But it was her next move that shattered Ethan's composure completely. Miranda wasn't just cheating for the thrill, she was leveraging her affair to secure a promotion at work. Betrayal burned deep, but the cold calculation behind it ignited a fire of righteous anger in Ethan's heart. The storm was brewing. And as Ethan planned his next steps, he knew this wasn't just about Miranda or Leonard. It was about protecting the life he had built, the family he cherished, and reclaiming his dignity. What he would do next would shock his family, and Miranda herself, but for Ethan, it was a matter of principle. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, fragments of the damning email flashed in his mind. Miranda's laugh, her touch, her vows from just days earlier, all of it felt like a cruel illusion. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in lazy circles, his thoughts whirling even faster. By morning, he had made a decision: he needed answers, and he needed them now. As Miranda hummed in the bathroom, getting ready for yet another work meeting, Ethan silently slipped her phone out of her purse. It took him just a moment to guess her passcode, her birthday, the same date engraved inside his wedding band. Inside, the truth unfolded in text messages, photos, and emails. Ethan scrolled through a flurry of exchanges between Miranda and Leonard. They spoke of secret dinners, hotel rendezvous, and plans for the future. What hit Ethan hardest wasn't just the infidelity, it was the transactional nature of their relationship. In exchange for her loyalty to Leonard, Miranda was guaranteed a significant promotion. She wasn't just betraying Ethan's heart, she was bartering her marriage for professional gain. Ethan couldn't decide which was worse, her dishonesty or her cold calculation. That evening, Ethan attended a family dinner at his parents' home. Karen and Dan, ever the gracious hosts, had invited Natalie as well, and the warm hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses filled the air. Yet, Ethan sat at the table, feeling like an actor in a play where everyone else believed in the script. He hadn't told anyone yet, not even Natalie, who could always read him like a book. "Everything okay, big bro?" she asked, nudging his shoulder after dinner. Ethan nodded stiffly, unable to meet her eyes. He didn't want to shatter the illusion of their perfect family, not here, not yet. But as the evening wore on, Natalie noticed his silence and pulled him aside. "Ethan, I'm serious," she whispered, her voice tinged with concern. "What's going on?" Unable to hold it in any longer, Ethan led Natalie out to the backyard. Under the soft glow of the patio lights, he told her everything: the receipt, the email, the texts. Natalie's eyes widened in disbelief. "She used your wedding to boost her career." Her voice cracked with anger. "Ethan, this isn't just cheating. It's betrayal on a whole different level." "I know," Ethan muttered. "But what do I do? Blow up our marriage? Confront her? It's not just about us, it's about everyone. Mom, Dad, you. I don't want to bring this chaos into their lives." Natalie placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, this isn't your burden to carry alone. Miranda made her choices. But whatever you do, you've got to protect yourself first." Over the next few days, Ethan began to gather evidence. He wasn't sure why, perhaps it was a way to solidify the truth in his mind, or maybe it was preparation for whatever came next. He hired a private investigator, who confirmed what Ethan already knew: Miranda was meeting Leonard regularly, both during work hours and late at night. Photos of the two, arm in arm at a swanky downtown bar, landed in Ethan's inbox. The final piece came unexpectedly. One afternoon, as Ethan sifted through documents in his home office, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Ethan, this is Rebecca Gates. I think we need to talk. Call me." Rebecca was Leonard's wife. Ethan's hand trembled as he dialed the number, unsure of what to expect. "Ethan," Rebecca began, her voice laced with tension. I don't know how to say this, but I think my husband and your wife are having an affair. Ethan exhaled slowly. I know. The line went silent for a moment before Rebecca spoke again. I thought I was imagining things. But then I saw some messages. He's been careless lately, and it all pointed to Miranda. Ethan clenched his jaw. Do you have proof? I do, Rebecca admitted. And I'm guessing you do too. They agreed to meet the next evening at a neutral spot, a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. Rebecca arrived first, a polished, professional woman who carried herself with the same poised air Miranda often wore. But as she spoke, Ethan saw the cracks in her facade, her trembling hands, the way her voice wavered as she recounted her suspicions. I thought Leonard and I were happy, Rebecca said, her eyes misting. We have 2 kids. A life. But this, she shook her head. It's like I don't even know him anymore. Ethan slid his phone across the table, showing her the investigator's photos. Rebecca paled as she scrolled through the images. That's him, she whispered. I can't believe this. And I can't believe Miranda, Ethan replied, bitterness creeping into his tone. She threw away everything we built, for this? Rebecca leaned back, her expression hardening. What are you going to do? Ethan didn't answer right away. I don't know yet. But one thing's for sure, this doesn't end here. That night, Ethan stayed up devising a plan. Confronting Miranda immediately felt too easy, too impulsive. If he wanted to break the facade she'd built, he had to be methodical. He decided to hold off until Miranda's next meeting with Leonard. Rebecca, furious and ready to expose her husband's duplicity, offered to help. Together, they began orchestrating a confrontation that would leave no room for denial. As the day approached, Ethan wrestled with a whirlwind of emotions, heartbreak, anger, and a strange sense of calm. He thought of Karen's words about trust being a shattered vase. He knew that no matter how this played out, his marriage to Miranda was beyond repair. But for Ethan, this wasn't just about ending a relationship, it was about reclaiming his dignity and ensuring that everyone saw Miranda's true colors. The pieces were in place, and the stage was set. Miranda had no idea that the dinner she'd planned with Leonard at a private dining room downtown was about to turn into the most explosive evening of her life. Ethan couldn't predict how the night would end, but he knew one thing: Miranda and Leonard's carefully constructed lies were about to come crashing down. The night of the confrontation arrived with a biting chill in the air, as though nature itself anticipated the storm brewing within Ethan Walker. He stood in the shadow of a parking garage across the street from the downtown restaurant where Miranda and Leonard had planned their private dinner. Rebecca Gates was beside him, her jaw clenched, her breath visible in the frosty air. You ready? She asked, her voice steady but laced with underlying tension. Ethan nodded, his face grim. Let's end this. The restaurant was upscale and dimly lit, with private dining rooms meant to shield high-profile clients from prying eyes. Ethan and Rebecca had carefully coordinated their plan. Armed with evidence and determined resolve, they had enlisted the help of the restaurant manager, a family friend of Rebecca's, who arranged for them to access the private room unnoticed. Inside, Miranda sat across from Leonard, laughing softly over a bottle of wine. She wore the green dress Ethan had bought her for their anniversary, the one she claimed was too special to wear just anywhere. Seeing her now, the sight made his stomach churn. Leonard leaned closer to Miranda, his hand grazing hers. You've earned this raise, Miranda. You're indispensable to the firm, and to me. Miranda blushed, lowering her gaze. You're too kind, Leonard. I just want to make sure I'm appreciated. Oh, you're more than appreciated. Leonard's voice was thick with implication. It took every ounce of self-control for Ethan to remain silent as he and Rebecca watched through a small gap in the doorway. His fists clenched at his sides, the urge to barge in almost overwhelming. But he waited, knowing timing was everything. The moment came when Leonard poured another glass of wine and leaned in further, his hand now resting atop Miranda's. You know, he began, his tone dropping into a whisper, there's no one else who could make me feel the way you do. It was Rebecca who stepped forward first, pushing the door open with a force that startled the pair inside. Ethan followed close behind, his expression unreadable, though his eyes burned with fury. Miranda's head snapped up, her face draining of color. Ethan? What are you? You mean, what are we doing here? Rebecca interjected, her voice cold and sharp as ice. I think the better question is, what are you doing? Leonard froze, his wine glass halfway to his lips. Rebecca, this isn't. Don't, Rebecca spat, her voice trembling with restrained anger. Don't even try to lie. We know everything. Ethan stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Miranda. How long? He asked, his voice low and steady, but with a dangerous edge. Miranda opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes darted between Ethan and Rebecca, the weight of her deceit crashing down. How long, Miranda? Ethan repeated, louder this time. Miranda stammered, tears welling in her eyes. It wasn't like that, Ethan. I swear. Oh, really? Ethan shot back, pulling out his phone. He tapped the screen and held it up, displaying the photos, the emails, the texts, the entire web of lies she'd spun. Then what was it like? Miranda's face crumpled as the evidence stared back at her. It was a mistake, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to happen. Rebecca scoffed. A mistake. 16 months of secret meetings, lies, and God knows what else. That's not a mistake, it's a calculated betrayal. Leonard stood, attempting to regain control of the situation. Look, this doesn't have to get out of hand. Ethan turned on him, his expression fierce. Sit down, Leonard. You've already done enough. Leonard hesitated, then sank back into his chair, his bravado slipping. Miranda's tears spilled over, her voice trembling. Ethan, please, I was scared. I didn't know how to tell you. The promotion, it was everything I've worked for. I didn't want to hurt you. Ethan's laugh was bitter, hollow. Hurt me? Miranda, you destroyed us. You didn't just cheat, you sold out our marriage for a job title. I love you, she insisted, reaching for him. I was going to end it. I swear. Don't, Ethan said sharply, stepping back. Don't you dare say you love me. Love doesn't do this. Rebecca, her fury still simmering, turned to Leonard. And you? What's your excuse? Throwing away our family for what? A fling with your employee? Leonard tried to defend himself. Rebecca, it's not like that. Stop, Rebecca cut him off. You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify this. You've humiliated me, humiliated our children. I hope it was worth it, Leonard, because you're about to lose everything. The room fell silent, the weight of the confrontation suffocating. Finally, Ethan broke the tension, his voice calmer but no less resolute. I'm done, Miranda. You've made your choices. Now I'm making mine. Ethan, no, Miranda started, but he held up a hand. You chose him, Ethan said, his voice firm. You chose your career, your lies, and your betrayal. I don't owe you forgiveness, and I sure as hell don't owe you another chance. With that, Ethan turned and walked out, Rebecca following close behind. Miranda's sobs echoed in the private room, but Ethan didn't look back. For the first time since the nightmare began, he felt a strange sense of relief. Outside, Rebecca exhaled shakily. What now? She asked. Ethan stared into the distance, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Now, he said, we rebuild. Not for them, for ourselves. Rebecca nodded, a mutual understanding passing between them. They had both been betrayed, but they wouldn't let it define them. Together, they walked into the night, leaving the wreckage behind. The morning after the confrontation, Ethan Walker woke to an unfamiliar calm. The house, once a shared sanctuary, now felt cavernous and cold. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. They bore no physical scars from the night before, but the invisible weight of what had transpired pressed heavily on him. Miranda hadn't come home. He wasn't sure where she'd gone, perhaps to Leonard, or maybe to one of her friends who hadn't yet learned the truth. Ethan didn't care. Her absence only solidified the inevitability of what lay ahead. Ethan called Natalie later that morning. Can you come over? He asked. His voice was steady, but Natalie immediately sensed the shift. On my way, she replied. When Natalie arrived, she found Ethan sitting at the dining table with a pile of papers, legal documents, financial statements, and what looked like notes for a letter. Her sharp eyes scanned the scene, piecing it together. "It's over, isn't it?" she asked, sitting across from him. Ethan nodded. "I filed for divorce this morning. I'm done." Natalie reached for his hand, her grip firm. "I'm proud of you. I know this isn't easy, but you're doing what's right, for you." Ethan's lips twitched into a faint smile. "Thanks, Nat. I can't keep pretending everything's fine." "Do Mom and Dad know?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. You always know how to handle this kind of thing." Natalie smirked. "You mean how to break bad news without Mom breaking out the tissues and Dad pacing the room? Don't worry, I've got you." Later that evening, Ethan sat with his parents in their cozy living room, the warmth of the fireplace contrasting sharply with the tension in the air. Karen and Dan listened quietly as Ethan recounted the events of the past weeks. When he finished, Karen wiped her eyes with a tissue, her voice soft but resolute. "We're here for you, Ethan," she said. "You deserve better than this." Dan, ever the stoic patriarch, placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, son. You'll get through this." Their unwavering support brought a measure of comfort, but Ethan couldn't help but feel the sting of disappointment in their voices. The Walkers had always been a family rooted in trust and integrity. Miranda's betrayal had cut deep, not just for Ethan but for all of them. Meanwhile, Rebecca Gates was facing her own battle. After the confrontation, Leonard had come home, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a desperate attempt to salvage his marriage. "Rebecca, please," he begged, standing in their lavish kitchen. "I made a mistake. It meant nothing." Rebecca turned to him, her eyes steely. "Nothing? 16 months of lying, sneaking around, and humiliating me and our children, nothing?" Leonard flinched but pressed on. "I'll end it. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Rebecca shook her head, her voice unwavering. "You can't fix this, Leonard. You didn't just betray me, you shattered the foundation of everything we built together. There's no going back." Leonard fell silent, realizing the futility of his pleas. Rebecca handed him a stack of papers, divorce documents. "Sign these. I'll make sure the process is fair, but I'm done." Her resolve was unshakable. For Rebecca, the betrayal had marked the end of her patience and her marriage. In the days that followed, the aftermath of the confrontation rippled through both families. Gossip spread like wildfire, fueled by whispers of high-powered lawyers and scandalous affairs. Miranda's co-workers speculated about her sudden demotion. Leonard, desperate to keep his own position, had sacrificed her career to save face. She was reassigned to menial tasks, her dreams of climbing the corporate ladder crumbling alongside her marriage. Ethan, however, found an unexpected ally in Rebecca. Their shared experience created a bond that transcended the pain of their circumstances. They met occasionally for coffee, not as conspirators but as friends navigating the same treacherous waters. "How are the kids handling it?" Ethan asked during one such meeting. "They're resilient," Rebecca replied, stirring her tea. "But it's hard. They ask why their dad doesn't live with us anymore, and I don't have a simple answer." Ethan nodded. "It's not easy, is it? Explaining why someone you love could hurt you so deeply." Rebecca gave him a small smile. "No, it's not. But it's necessary. We can't protect them from everything, but we can show them how to face the truth." Her words resonated with Ethan. For weeks, he had wrestled with anger, shame, and a sense of loss. But talking to Rebecca reminded him that healing wasn't about forgetting, it was about moving forward. One afternoon, as Ethan walked through the neighborhood park, he spotted Natalie sitting on a bench. She waved him over, a mischievous grin on her face. "Guess what?" she said. "What?" "I signed you up for a community woodworking class." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Woodworking?" "Yep. You need something to channel all that energy into. Plus, you're great with your hands. Think of it as therapy." Ethan laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "You're relentless. And you love me for it," Natalie quipped. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan began to rebuild his life. He poured his energy into his construction business, expanding its reach and earning the respect of his peers. The woodworking class became a surprising source of joy, a place where he could lose himself in the craft and connect with others. Miranda tried to reach out once, sending a long letter filled with apologies and regrets. Ethan read it, but he didn't respond. Some wounds, he realized, were better left to heal without reopening. Rebecca finalized her divorce and found solace in her work and her children. She and Ethan remained friends, their shared experiences a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as Ethan stood in his workshop, the smell of freshly cut wood filling the air, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in months. The scars of Miranda's betrayal would always remain, but they no longer defined him. He was stronger now, steadier. And for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. It was a quiet evening when Ethan received the envelope. It arrived unmarked, left on his doorstep as though delivered by a ghost. Inside was a single photograph and a note, both in Miranda's handwriting. The photograph showed them on their wedding day, standing under the arch of flowers, her smile dazzling. He remembered that moment, the sheer joy and hope for the future. But seeing it now, it felt like a cruel parody. The note was simple, scrawled in haste. Ethan, I know I've lost everything. If you ever loved me, please meet me tonight at the place where we said our first, I love you. I need to explain. Miranda. Ethan stared at the note, the weight of its request pulling him in opposing directions. Against his better judgment, he grabbed his coat and left, not for reconciliation but closure. The old oak tree in the park stood as it always had, its branches reaching out against the starry sky. Miranda was already there, her figure hunched in a cold, the same green dress from their ill-fated dinner still clinging to her. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan stayed a few steps away, his arms crossed. What do you want, Miranda? I wanted to apologize, she began, her eyes brimming with tears. Not for you to forgive me, but because you deserve to hear it. I destroyed everything we had, Ethan. And I don't even know why. I got lost in ambition, in wanting to feel something. Her words hung in the air, but Ethan felt no solace in them. You didn't just hurt me, Miranda. You turned our life into a game. A transaction. You threw away our marriage for power. I know, she said, her voice breaking. And I'll live with that regret every day. But Ethan, I need you to know it wasn't because I didn't love you. I did, maybe I still do. Ethan's laugh was bitter, cutting through the stillness. Love? That's what you call this? She reached for him, but he stepped back. Please, she whispered, her voice desperate. Can't we try again? Ethan met her gaze, his own steady and unyielding. You made your choice, Miranda. And I've made mine. You can't rebuild trust on ashes. The wind picked up, carrying away her sobs as Ethan turned and walked away, leaving Miranda alone beneath the oak. Driving home, Ethan felt lighter, as though the weight of the past months had finally lifted. The road stretched before him, illuminated by the glow of his headlights. For the first time, the future felt like his own. Back at his house, he stepped into the workshop Natalie had helped him set up. On the workbench lay the beginnings of a new project, a hand-carved wooden vase. He ran his fingers along the smooth grain, the imperfections already smoothed out. Life, he realized, was like this piece of wood. It could splinter and break, but with care, it could also be shaped into something new. Ethan smiled to himself, then picked up his tools and got to work. What would you do if betrayal shattered your life like this? Could you forgive, or is moving on the only way? Share your thoughts below.